on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
And a hearty congratulations to all the Eagles fans out there on winning the Super Bowl. Oh, I'm so sorry. Congratulations has multiple syllables. Let me try that again. Good job, Eagles fans. There.
Oh, God,
I don't want to confuse them. You know, you have to accommodate how you communicate to the audience that you're communicating to. You go multi-symbolic on an Eagles fan, or anyone from Philadelphia for that matter, and you're lost. Coming up at 7:35. Come on. The Redskins would have been a much more entertaining game. The Lions would have been a more entertaining. The Bills would have. That was a terrible football game, okay?
Yeah, kind of boring.
I was hoping for Colin Kaepernick to come out there and protest the national anthem. I mean, anything.
Let's not go crazy.
Tim Burt will analyze the Super Bowl ads last night. 8:05, Joe Concha will give us his review of the whole thing. And 8:35, Dr. Gleb Tsipursky, who is an expert on commuting, work from home, hybrid work from home, the solution to the nightmare you're sitting in right now trying to get into D.C. That's all coming up. Julie Gunlock's there. Larry O'Connor's here. And Joe diGenova joins us now, as he always does. Did you have a rooting interest in this game, Joe, or do you hate both teams as much as I do?
No, I was rooting for the Eagles. I'm from Wilmington, Delaware, as you know, the home of the Biden crime family. I have rooted for the Eagles all my life and the New York Giants. So I had my team, and I must say it was a horrible game. It wasn't fun to watch. No. And all I could think of during the halftime show, watching this guy Kendrick Lamar, my head kept going to Headley Lamar in Blazing Saddles.
Headley.
I just couldn't get it out of my head. Headley Lamar, the governor.
There you go. Harumph. Joe diGenova, where do we begin? All right, first, all of the screaming and renting of clothing and the protesting and the resistance finally woke up last week, but it was to protect the federal bureaucracy and the shadow funding of programs under you. I mean, finally, Democrats have figured out what hill to die on, but politically, I don't know if it's a good hill for them. What about the legality of it? Can President Trump empower this Department of Government Efficiency that Elon Musk is coordinating to do what he's been doing?
Absolutely. Under the theory of the unitary executive, which is a constitutional interpretation of Article 2, there is only one executive branch person, and that is the President of the United States. Everything else flows from him, which means he controls everything else, and therefore he has the right to do this. Now, we have all these laws like the Pendleton Act, the Civil Service Act. Under the unitary executive theory, those laws are unconstitutional, and they cannot prevent the president from firing somebody. The Supreme Court, by the way, recently held that in the Consumer Protection Bureau, where the president recently fired the chairman of that board, even though that person is there for a fixed term. The Supreme Court said he can do what he needs to do. He has to be able to remove people. So what's going to happen is this is all going to work its way through the courts. I assume the Supreme Court will affirm his ability to do this. And if it doesn't, and I underscore this, if the Supreme Court does not affirm the unitary executive and his ability to fire people, I predict that we are going to have created in the House a caucus for impeachment of federal judges. It's coming down the pike. People are not going to stand for this. And I've heard discussions of it recently, sort of on the periphery of political discussion, but the impeachment of federal judges is on its way.
Well, maybe we should start with this federal judge that has blocked the Department of Government Efficiency from accessing Treasury Department payment systems. Now, by the way, the Secretary of Treasury Bessent said that this was on a read-only basis. But the Doge people are very smart. They're going into these little departments and these agencies, and they're saying, all right, show me the organizational structure. In other words, who's in charge and who answers to who, and then show me the payments. Who's getting the money? Who's authorizing the money? That's how you get to the root of these things. Musk knows that, and his team knows that. So how does this judge keep a executive branch agency from seeing payment systems in an executive branch agency? By the way, my understanding is it's Treasury employees as well have been barred. The Secretary of Treasury can't see the payment system for the Treasury Department, Joe.
As I said, coming down the pike is judicial impeachments. It's coming because this ruling is absurd. Now, just think about this. The President of the United States runs the executive branch. There's no question about that.
Yep.
His designees, legally appointed, DOJ, are accessing for the purposes of analysis and to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, which is one of the responsibilities of the president. And the judge says they can't look at the data to figure out where the fraud is. That judge is an idiot. You cannot, and you know what the problem is? The problem is very simple. These unions who are bringing these lawsuits are worried about protecting their turf. The first thing the judge should have said during that hearing is, what's your problem with finding out about fraud? What's your problem? And the words never left his lips.
Joe, you said this will wind its way through the courts eventually. It'll land in the Supreme Court. How long does that take? Because in my mind, this is part of the lawfare that they're playing now. They're just trying to delay these things. They know it's wrong. They know that he has the right to do this, but they're just trying to delay things. So how long will that process take?
Well, that depends on how smart Chief Justice Roberts is. They can allow this to meander on for a year or so. But by the way, the problem that the plaintiffs have in this case is that's not going to stop the president. They still have the right to do things which will do exactly what the president wants to do. If they want, let's say these unions, these government employee unions who want to stop this, get their way, and this goes on. You know what they're going to do? They're going to zero out entire sections of these departments during the appropriations process, which, by the way, is underway.
Yeah.
So if they want to play that game, the president and the Congress have the ultimate card over the judges, and that's it. The judges cannot order the spending of public money. They cannot appropriate funds. But once the president makes the decision that he's going to defund entire sections of departments, nothing can be done about it.
We're speaking with legal expert and former U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia, Joe diGenova. And Joe, there's so much to unpack here over the past week of what's gone on and the attempts for Congress, Democrats in Congress, to block it. The image, though, of Maxine Waters and other Democrats screaming at this poor security guard as they demanded to enter the Department of Education to, I don't know what they wanted to do once they got in there. It's not like they know how to work a computer. But it gave the impression that any elected member of the legislative branch at any moment can demand access to any of the executive branch agency. Is that the case? Do they have that kind of power? Were they being blocked from exercising their power as members of Congress?
Individual members don't have that right, but committees have that right. Members can make a request, and the request can be denied depending upon what the information is they're seeking. But here's the problem. They look very privileged standing out there screaming and yelling at a security guard. Forget the fact that they look like fools. They're idiots. They sound stupid. They're cursing in public. They're saying some of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. I was watching all those members line up to give all these speeches and how proud they were. And we're going to Congress. We're going to the courts. And we're going in the streets. My goodness, all that violent language about going in the streets. It's like 2020 in the summer of 2020, BLM all over again. Fascinating. I mean, I think these members look stupid. They look uninformed. They look goofy. They look like they're out of control. I mean, the number of adjectives that you can apply to them is simply amazing.
Well, and again, the hill to die on. It's like we're Trump and Elon Musk have exposed all of this corruption, money, tens of millions and billions of dollars going to these ridiculous things, and that doesn't outrage them. The fact that it's been exposed is what outrages them.
Listen. I vote for big balls. I'm all in. He's my guy.
Joe, we've known that about you for many years.
Put him up. Put him right up. I want a new coin that has big balls on it.
All right, we're going to keep Joe.
Right out of the mint.
Despite my better judgment, we're going to keep Joe diGenova for one more segment because we do have to ask about the birthright citizenship question, which is making its way through the courts, and also Trump revoking security clearances for people. And Republicans are looking to revoke D.C. home rule. Tons of stuff to continue with Joe diGenova. Keep it right here. First, though,
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
For several years, I've been saying here as we catalog the nightmare of the dysfunction of the district council here in Washington, their inability to enforce the law, to empower the police to enforce the law, to prosecute criminals, the laws where they waived the laws against fare jumping, and then Metro, spirals into a nightmare. The criminal vagrancy that they like to call our unhoused neighbors that are making it impossible to live in Washington, D.C., carjacking laws, on and on and on. I've been saying that home rule is a failed concept. That the D.C. home rule, obviously they've proven that they cannot rule themselves. And now we've got two members of Congress. We've got Andy Ogles of Tennessee and Mike Lee of Utah, who have introduced the Repeal the D.C. Home Rule Act. And by the way, they're calling it the Bowser Act, which I love. The Bowser stands for Bringing Oversight to Washington and Safety to Every Resident. The Bowser Act. Joe, this feels like pretty good trolling, but I think it's actually a concept that should get serious attention. How feasible would this be? What would it look like if they got rid of D.C. Home Rule?
Well, it would look like what was originally called for in the Constitution. In Article 1, which establishes the congressional branch of government, there is language which establishes a federal enclave for the seat of government. It's called the Seat of Government Clause. And that was it eventually became the District of Columbia. As you know, part of the District of Columbia was originally in Virginia, and it was eventually ceded back to Virginia, and we were left with the portion on this side of the Potomac River. And that was because during the Continental Congress, a group of renegade militiamen from Pennsylvania had surrounded Constitution Hall in Philadelphia over pay. They weren't getting paid, and so they took hostage the Continental Congress. And Congress specifically wrote in, we will not be subject to the pressures of a local government, and therefore we will have a federal enclave. Now, Congress, I think in a very stupid way during the Nixon administration, gave away almost all control of the district except for ultimate review, which they retained under the Constitution, and allowed for home rule. Now, this was at a time, this was post-civil rights movement, goody, all this stuff, wonderful, fabulous, and everyone's complaining, we should have the right for self-government. That's fine. And the Congress made the decision during the Nixon administration that they wanted to do that. And there's no question that it's been a failed experiment. I mean, all you have to do is look at the people that have run the District of Columbia, starting with Marion Barry,
yes,
people like Walter Fauntroy. I remember Walter Fauntroy holding demonstrations against me when I was U.S. Attorney over there at Liberty Square across from City Hall. The bottom line is this. Congress has the power to do this. Will they do it? I doubt it. I just don't think they have the stomach for it with everything else going on. But one thing they should do, they can do a number of small things. They can say that the mayor no longer has control over the National Guard for the District of Columbia, that that's under the direct control of the President of the United States for security purposes, that she cannot deny the use of the D.C. National Guard. And if there's a general in charge of the D.C. National Guard who doesn't like that, he should be court-martialed. He or she should be court-martialed. There has to be firm federal control of the federal enclave. We want to have a city council? Fine. Ordinances, they should not be allowed to pass criminal laws. That should all be done by Congress under no circumstances. For example, there used to be the D.C. Corporation Council. That was the local person in charge of legislative activity, and, that was like the local prosecutor for misdemeanors and traffic offenses. Now they've got the D.C. Attorney General. By what authority? They just went and did that. They just called him the Attorney General. And if you watch him and his performance, you'll see a good reason for rejecting home rule. I'm in favor, by the way, of enacting complete federal control of the enclave, and for people that don't like it, move, go someplace else.
Right.
What you don't want is D.C. to continue to be Gaza.
Yeah. And if you move, just don't come to Virginia. Look, Trump is revoking security clearances. We saw that all last week, and the latest is President Biden, former President Biden, which is great. But Joe, what is going on? Why hasn't he revoked? And maybe I missed something. Maybe you can update us. Chris Wray, the Vindmans, Blinken. Are you? I feel like these are.
Blinken.
Did they get Blinken? Oh, okay, they got Blinken. Oh, good.
He got Blinken over the way. Well, I have a very short list of people that I really care about. Christopher Wray and James Comey. I do not understand that either one of them continues to have a security clearance, and I hope for the folks in the West Wing who are listening to WMAL that I'm sure there are other lists being generated for this. Of course, my favorite, I get up every day and I just say, Leon Panetta does not have a security clearance any longer. What a fantastic way to start Monday.
Joe diGenova, always great to talk with you, sir. Thanks for dropping it as you always do. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Go Eagles, go, soar.
Yeah. Yeah, that little history lesson about how Philadelphians were storming Independence Hall and taking hostages.
That's right.
Those are Eagles fans. Those are the forefathers of the Eagles fans.
Just like the people. The Eagles fans are just like the militia.